Hey everyone, Josh here with Fresh Start Customs, and today is going to be a very in-depth guide for Glowforge settings. We're going to be talking about proof-grade material, non-proof-grade material. We're going to be talking about manual settings, hidden settings that you may not know about that the Glowforge has, photo engrave settings, vector settings, everything that you need to know about settings with Glowforge. I'm going to cover today in depth, so grab some popcorn, stick along, and maybe you'll learn something today about this. So let's go ahead and jump into this today. First off, as you can see here, I got some examples. You're going to need to know this terminology if you're brand new to Glowforge. There's proof grade material, which is material sold directly from Glowforge. They make and process it and sell it. And then there's non-proof grade material, which is pretty much everything else in the world. So this is an example of birch wood that's sold from Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, pretty much anywhere else that's not Glowforge. Glowforge only sells proof grade material. Now that you know that terminology, if you ever see that, if someone says non-proof grade, it means it's not made by Glowforge. If they say proof grade, it's this stuff here. So as you can see, if you order a bunch of proof grade material at once, they usually shrink wrap it and send it to you. Nice little package like this. If you only order 1 or 2 sheets, it may come loose, and it'll look just like this top sheet here. Proof grade material is pre-masked. Masking tape is basically this white layer that's on top of this. It's to prevent overburn whenever the laser hits the material and burns or cuts out the material. And then you peel the masking tape off after you cut that material out. They also put a little QR code on here that will automatically set the settings for you when you place it into a Glowforge machine. So that's handy if you don't want to deal with settings at all and you use just proof grade material. It should do all the settings automatically for you. If it doesn't, I'm going to show you guys how to manually select those proof grade settings in just a second here. Once you get all the material off and you print it, it's going to look something like this. This is a finished design that I think I did in episode 2. I quickly showed you guys this design on my Etsy page here. I also have the green glass acrylic proof grade material with this design too. So that's kind of what it looks like when it's all printed. And here is what it looks like in a Glowforge Pro machine with the masking tape actually off of it. And that's just the walnut version. They have many different versions and colors of proof grade material. With non-proof grade, the most commonly used thing is this Baltic birch here. Super cheap, easy to get from pretty much anywhere. You can also get higher quality stuff. I used to sell some high quality stuff that was really close to proof grade, but it didn't have the glossy finish on it or pre-masking tape on it. So you can get that from all sorts of places. There's even Glowforge owners that sell really nice stuff that's really comparable to proof grade material. So check out the different groups there. Now that you know both of those terminology, where to get them, all about them, let's jump into the settings here. So we're going back to app.glowforge.com. After you uploaded your design, like I showed you in episode 2, it's going to bring you to this screen. I'm going to be using the exact same example I used from episode 2 here. This is that back to school ruler. As you can see, I've got it uploaded. It looks straight like this. And it's got these 3 different settings over here. Once you put your material in your machine, it will show the material up behind this image here. It'll look like a white sheet if you have masking tape on it, or whatever color material your material is if you upload it. Mine's just going to be black for this episode because my machine is off and I don't have any material in my machine. So just imagine there's a white background to this, or your material background, whatever you have selected. So if we had a sheet of wood in here, right now it says unknown material. That means that it can't detect that QR code that I showed you on this photo here, this little QR code. And it thinks that you have non-proof grade material in there. So if you have non-proof grade material in there, it'll say unknown material, and then you'll have to click on each of these settings individually, and then you have to come down to manual, and you have to manually come up with your settings. You can do that, or you can also use proof grade auto settings but you'll have to kind of work around based on your material type, whether your material has like glue pockets in it that can affect the cutting. And we'll get a little bit more in depth on what I'm talking about there as well. So let's just imagine that we put that that medium walnut plywood that we just had in there. So just imagine that it's back inside of this machine right now is that sheet of material. We just placed this in there and it would show up white behind here. So as you can see, it automatically selected what it thinks is engravings, what it thinks is cut markers, and then it thinks that all of this is cut, but this is actually score markers on this one. So what you'll have to do is click on the one you want to change. So let's say we need to change this cut to score. We're going to click score right there. As you can see, it now has each one individually highlighted as I hover over it. Right here's the engraving of the numbers. Here's the scoring of those the quick inch letters and the lines for the ruler. And then here is the cut markers that I wanted to cut out. So that's pretty much it for Proofgrade. It will automatically set what you want it to set to with that QR code. And then they have different settings that you can use that are preset too. There's like a draft graphic or an HD graphic. That'll be like a higher or a lower engraving speeds. And that's basically for making it darker or lighter. I always use SD graphic. I think 90% of the community, if not more, use SD graphic. Works perfect. I've never had an issue with it on anything. Now this is the vector side of things. I'm going to get to the rasterized image side of things. So if you want to engrave just a regular photo that's not been turned into a vector, we're going to cover that here in just a second, but we're going to cover a majority of things, which would be these vector designs here first. So another thing that you can do is, let's say I don't want to engrave any numbers on this at all. I just want to leave it blank. You can click on your engrave section here and then just click ignore. So what's going to happen is your laser is going to do everything in order right here how you have it. So it's going to ignore this. It's not going to do any engravings now that I have ignore selected. And then it's going to skip to score. So it's going to score all these little lines out. And then lastly, it's going to cut out your design. So if you want your cut to go first, just move that up top here. And then it'll cut first and then score. And then if you want your engraving back, you just go up here, click on engrave. And it'll do that order. It'll do engrave, cut, score. It's usually best to leave your cut for last. That way no pieces fall out and you can line everything up first. So I always do engrave, score, cut on every design that I do. You can choose whatever way you want to do it. Score, engrave, cut is a good way too. So whichever way you want to do it, you can do that in the order that you want your machine to cut out. So now that we got the Proofgrade out of the way, and I was showing you the non-Proofgrade earlier, what I meant by you can start with Proofgrade and then go into non-Proofgrade is, let's say you have a material that's 1/8 inch and it's walnut, but it's not actually sold by Glowforge. You can use these same settings for that. That's non-Proofgrade. This will actually most likely work for you, but if it doesn't, let's say it doesn't cut all the way through, you can then come down here to manual and you can change the settings manually. But what you can do though is you can use the Proofgrade settings right here first and click this little arrow and you can see the actual settings of Proofgrade. So this is the actual cut settings they're using. Let's say it doesn't cut through on yours. You can either slow down the speed or increase power. But as you can see, the power is maxed out. So you're going to have to slow down the speed to get a higher cut speed or a more in-depth cut. So let's go ahead and go down to 150. Let's say it didn't cut through. If 150 works, then that's great. If you start seeing a flame or something, stop your Glowforge. You'll have to increase this back up. So let's say 155. And then you'll just kind of work back and forth until you find the perfect setting for your material type. Let's say that works perfectly. As you can see, it now says 155 speed, full power, and a 1 pass over here on the right-hand side. You have officially made your own custom setting for this type of material. If you like that setting, you can actually save it by clicking this little plus button here and giving it a name. So you can put like non-proofgrade and walnut. And then you just hit save. And when you hit save, it's going to show up right here under your custom settings list here. So right there, non-proofgrade walnut. So if I wanted to cut these score lines, I could go over here to cut and then choose non-proofgrade walnut, and I'll never have to manually type it in again. It automatically changes to that setting that I did, and then that works best for my material and not proofgrade material. So you can do the same thing. So let's say we use uncertified material. We're just going to type in a number here. There we go. And I want the same settings as before. I can just go through and select that non-proofgrade walnut. So if you have unknown material listed, you can do it that way too. But just keep in mind, it's not going to auto-fill in proofgrade settings this way that you can work off of. You'll have to manually come up with like engraved settings completely on your own. So we could do full speed, like 80 power, see how that looks, and then work our way up from there. Now with engravings though, you can also do lines per inch. So that's basically how many lines it puts in an engraving per inch there. The more you go, the more deep it's going to be and the darker it's going to be. I usually stay at 225 max. And 195 minimum. Usually between 195 and 225 works really good for engravings, but you can play around with those settings, whatever works best for you. Now with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and show you the proofgrade material again. So if we switch back to proofgrade, you can see this automatically filled with Glowforge's SD graphics. And then if I click on that, here's the settings that they have set automatically for it. And then let's say it was too dark for my liking. Let's go ahead and turn it up to like 700 speed. And then you can actually drop the power a little bit to make it lighter too. It's going to make it quite a bit lighter because we increase the speed and decrease the power. And then if you want to make it even lighter, we can go ahead and reduce those lines per inch that I was talking about. And that'll make it a much lighter. If you want to make it darker, you would just increase the lines per inch again, increase your power, and then decrease your speed. But make sure that you don't decrease it so much that you start a fire. So always stay by your machine. Always test out your material with like a small image, such as a small like engraving or a small cut first before you go too in depth with it there. So that's pretty much proofgrade material and non-proofgrade material in a nutshell. I kind of went kind of fast there. What you can do though is, let's say, like I said before, let's say that proofgrade QR code didn't automatically scan your settings. You can manually find it by scrolling down in this list if it'll let you, but it kind of stops and it doesn't show you the full list of the Glowforge materials. So let's say you have medium. Let's see here. You got medium maple. There we go. Medium maple plywood. I use this one a lot. Just select that. It'll automatically select the settings as long as you make sure you're on Glowforge settings here. So we're going to go back to Glowforge's settings here on all of these. And right there is the proofgrade settings automatically selected for you. And it'll auto change based on which one you select now. So if I go ahead and select thick glass green acrylic, it's automatically changed since I'm on the Glowforge proofgrade settings currently. Hopefully that makes sense. I know it's kind of its own little creature there. And then if you want to find some unknown, like hidden settings that aren't Proofgrade material. You could type in like cardboard. As you can see, this corrugated cardboard, they have an 1/8 inch, and they also have this size as well. It'll also pull up some random stuff like this, like Microsoft Surface notebook. You can do that as well. You can type in the word Mac, and then there's like the silver MacBook. There's all sorts of different settings. There's also like an iPhone 7. Different things like that are actually truly not Proofgrade, but they added in so you don't mess up the settings on them. So if you're brave enough to put in like an iPhone 7 into your machine, you could technically engrave that using this black iPhone 7 settings or your MacBook with this silver MacBook Pro settings here. I've seen people do it. It's really cool. So those are pretty much all of the actual hidden settings. You can kind of go in there, type in different letters, see different things that you may be able to find. Another big one that isn't talked about mostly is the 20-pound copy paper. So you can actually cut paper with your Glowforge, and it is highly flammable, obviously. So you want to stay around your Glowforge whenever you do this. So I recommend staying with your Glowforge if you are going to cut paper or just anything in general. Especially if you're going to leave the room, I would have a camera on it with your phone in hand, being able to view it, and I wouldn't be gone from that room for very long at all. It's not recommended to leave it alone at all. If you ever need to pause your machine, you can just hit the little print button again. It'll pause the machine temporarily, but it'll still be running the fan in the background for the fumes. And then when you come back in the room, just hit that button again. It'll unpause your machine and let you print off from there. I think I've covered pretty much everything on the vector side. Now we're going to go into the graphics side here. So what I mean by that is I'm going to upload a new image like we talked about in episode 2. And this is an actual photo here. So this is a JPEG photo I'm opening. So this is a actual graphic or a rasterized image versus a vector image. That just means that it was like taken with a camera, never edited on like Illustrator like I showed you in episode 3. It's just a straight photo. It takes a while to upload those, but right here you can see that photo is now uploaded. And let's say I wanted to engrave this on a piece of wood just as it is. As you can see, it is automatically detecting Proofgrade settings for you. So let's say it's medium maple that we talked about earlier. It is auto-detecting the settings at once, and that's under draft photo. So draft photo works really good for me. In my opinion, it works awesome on Proofgrade or non-Proofgrade. I use this draft photo settings pretty much on every single type of material I use. So for example, if I had a thicker maple plywood, I would just type in thick maple plywood, right here it is, and I would select this Proofgrade setting here, even if it's non-Proofgrade, and then I just use draft photo. It works about every time without any fail because it's just engraving that top surface. If you had walnut, you would type in walnut, whatever type of material you have. It works really well. You can mess around with the other settings just by selecting Proofgrade's auto settings for like draft graphic, SD graphic, HD graphic, and those will be lighter or darker depending on which one you select. And then if you go into the manual edits like I showed you of the Proofgrade material, this is what the Proofgrade's auto selection is, and you can edit off of this. So you will want to convert with dots turned on with photos, because basically that's why you see all these little grainy dots in here. That's actually going to be giving you a better image quality whenever it engraves onto a board, and it's going to engrave a lot faster. You have a lot less lines per inch than a standard vector engraving. So this is the automatically defaulted Proofgrade settings, and then you can kind of manually edit from there. So if you want it to be a little bit darker, you can slow down your speed to make it darker. If you need it to be lighter, you can increase the speed to be lighter. Whatever you need to do. You can also reduce the power if you need it to be lighter versus increasing the speed. So you can kind of play with these settings and get a manual setting straight from here. And then you can kind of mess with the pattern density too. So if the image is getting really light and it's missing some of the quality, you can kind of reduce the light end of the scale of the pixel pattern and increase those dots. Or you can reduce the heavy end of the scale and decrease those dots there. This one is a beta option. I haven't really messed around with this too much here. I think it's kind of the same process as above. I don't really ever see that change too much. I usually just leave it on maximize quality. And then you can change your lines per inch just like before. So if you want it to be darker and have more detail, you can go up to like 195 or higher. If you need it to be a little bit lighter or less detail, you can go down in lines per inch. And lastly, what I didn't cover is your number of passes. So the number of passes is basically, let's say it engraves this whole thing. And then if you set it on 2, it'll redo the entire image all over again. It'll do the same thing with like cuts or scores. This is mainly used for cuts or scores. So if you're using like a really thick or really dense material, you can set like the speed to like 500 and the power to, let's say, 100. And then you set it on two passes. It'll do that cut path, and then it'll do the cut path again to try and cut through that denser wood. Most people only do one pass and don't run into that issue, but if you want to do custom settings for like really dense wood, you can do that, but it is a higher chance to start a fire, so just keep that in mind. Now if you don't want to play off of the auto Proofgrade material, you want to start completely manual, just like before, you come down here to manual, click on that, and then you can choose all of your settings manually. It always starts at the normal top speed of 1000 and then a 1 power. That way you don't start a fire. You work your way up from there. I just auto click. Let's say 79 is good. Convert to dots. I always recommend that one. But you can do like vary power. You can convert to patterns. I haven't messed with these settings all that much, but you can choose whichever settings you want. And whatever looks best for you, you can do. And then just like before, you can choose your lines per inch. I usually do 225 is the maximum, and 195 or 170 works pretty good too. But other than that, yeah, that is pretty much how you do the photo engravings as well. I think I've pretty much covered everything. Just keep in mind when you do those manual settings and you find something perfect for you, you can save them like I did here, like I showed you earlier. And you can get back to them anytime just by clicking on it. So let's say I save this birch engrave setting. We're going to just click birch engrave. It's ready to go. It's ready to be printed on birch based on a manual setting that I tweaked before. I could engrave that image right on the side of this birch box here, and it would look really great. Other than that, I hope you guys found this useful. I hope I was as in-depth as possible. If you guys have any questions at all, just leave them in the comments below, or if you think that I missed anything, let me know below too. I know there's a lot of information to unpack in this video here. Other than that, we'll catch you guys in the next one.